right, my dear Sophie. Thy prophecies are more successful than any advice. Danceny, as you predicted, has been stronger than any confessor, than you, or even myself. We are just as we were before. I am not sorry for it, and if thou art, and that you scorn me, it is because you are a stranger to the pleasure I have in loving Danceny. It is easy to lay down rules, how we should act, but if you had ever experienced the distress we feel for those we love, how we participate in his joys, how difficult it is to say no when we wish to say yes, you would no longer be astonished. I, who have already sensibly felt it, cannot as yet conceive. Now can you believe that I can see Danceny cry without crying myself? That, I assure you, is impossible. And when he is pleased, I am happy. It is in vain to talk about it. What is must be, and I am sure it is so. I wish you were in my room, but that is not what I mean to say, for certainly I would not give place to anyone. But I wish you were in love with somebody. It is not only that you should understand me better, but that you should have less reason to find fault, but also that you should be happier, or rather that you should begin to taste of happiness. Our amusements are trifles, and all that is folly, but in love, a word, a look, only, is the summit of happiness. When I see Danceny, I wish for nothing more. When he is from me, I wish for nothing but him. I cannot account for it, but I imagine that everything that pleases me bears a resemblance to him. When he is absent from me, I dream of him, and when I can think of him without being disturbed, that is, when I am alone, I am happy. When I close my eyes, I think I see him, I recall his conversation, and I think I hear him speak. Then I sigh, I feel myself agitated in a strange manner. It is a kind of sensation, I don't know what to call it, but it is inexpressibly delightful. I am apt to think that when one is in love, it diffuses itself to one friendship. That I have for thee has never altered. It is always the same as it was in the convent, but that I experience with Madame de Motet is more like the affection I have for Danceny than that I have for thee. And I sometimes wish she was a man. That is perhaps because it is not a childish friendship like ours, or else that I see them so often together. But this I am sure of. Between them both they make me very happy. After all, I don't think there is any great harm in what I do. I wish I was to remain as I am, for there is nothing gives me uneasiness but the thoughts of my marriage. Adieu, my dear Sophie. I love thee most affectionately. What purpose would it answer, sir, to give a reply to your request? For to agree with your opinions would be a stronger motive to beware of them, and without either attacking or defending their sincerity, it is enough for me, and ought to be so for you also, to know that neither ought nor will answer them. Let us suppose for a moment that you may have a sincere affection for me, and it is only that we may have done with the subject that I admit the supposition, would the obstacles that separate us be the less insurmountable, and ought not my wishes to be still the same, that you should overcome this passion and every effort of mine employed to assist you, by hastening to deprive you of all manner of hope? You agree that this idea must hurt when the object that inspires it does not share it. You are sufficiently convinced that it is impossible for me to share it, and if even I experience such a misfortune, I should be the more to be pitied without adding in the least to your happiness. I hope I have such a share in your esteem that you will not call what I now say in question. Cease then, I conjure you, cease to disturb a heart to which tranquillity is so necessary, Do not oblige me to regret my acquaintance with you. Beloved and esteemed by a husband who I love and respect, my duty and pleasure are united in the same object. I am happy. I ought to be so. If there are more lively pleasures existing, I wish them not. I will not be acquainted with them. Can any be so pleasing as to be at peace with oneself, to enjoy days of serenity, to sleep without disturbance, and to awake without remorse? What you call happiness is a tumult of the senses, the storm of passions, the aspect of which is dreadful, even viewing from the shore. And who then would encounter such storms? Who would dare embark upon a sea spread with thousands and thousands of wrecks? And with whom? No, sir. I will remain upon land. I cherish the links with which I am attached. I would not break them if I could, and if even I was not bound, I would speedily wear them. Why do you pursue my steps? Why do you obstinately follow me? Your letters, which were to be but seldom, succeed each other with rapidity. They were to be discreet, and you entertain me with nothing but your mad passion. You surround me with your ideas, more than you did with your person. Put away under one form, you again appear under another. The things I desire you to be silent upon, you say over again in another manner. You take a pleasure in perplexing me by captious reasons, and you evade mine. I will not reply to you any more. How you treat the women you have seduced, how contemptedly do you speak of them. I will readily believe some of them deserve it, but are they all then so contemptible? Doubtless they are, since they have relinquished virtue to give themselves to a criminal passion. In that moment they lost all, even the esteem of him whom they sacrificed everything. This punishment is just, but the idea alone is enough to make one shudder. But what is all this to me? Why should I trouble myself about you or them? What right have you to disturb my peace? Leave me, see me no more, write me no more, I beseech you. I even require it. This letter shall be the last you will ever receive from me. I received your letter yesterday at my return. Your anger is enchanting. You could not have felt Danceny's errors in a more lively manner if they had even affected yourself. It is undoubtedly for the sake of revenge that you accustom his mistress to commit little infidelities. You are a mischievous creature. How delightful you are, and I am not astonished that one can resist you less than Danceny. At length I have gained the confidence of this hero of romance. He has no longer any secrets with me. I much extol the supreme happiness attendant on an honourable passion, proved that one such passion was infinitely superior to 10 intrigues, and that even I am but a timid lover. He was so pleased with this way of thinking, it being so comfortable to his own, and enchanted with my candour, that he poured out his whole soul, and vowed an everlasting friendship without reserve. However, our project is no more advanced. At first he seemed of opinion that a young lady should be treated more cautiously than a woman, as having more to lose. He is particularly persuaded that a man is unjustifiable who reduces a girl to the necessity of marrying him, or living dishonoured, when a girl is in much more affluent circumstances than the man, as is his present case. The mother's confidence is the daughter's candour. Everything intimidates and restrains him. The difficulty lies not in overruling his arguments, however just. With the assistance of his passion and a little address, they might soon be overturned, being so open to ridicule in opposite fashion. But the obstacle to this having the effect upon him that he thinks himself happy as he is, first almost appear in general more honourable, or, as it is called, more chaste, because they are slower, and not, as is imagined, from delicacy or timidity, in those the heart, astonished by an insensible instinct, stops, as it were, to enjoy the delight it feels. And this powerful delight takes such strong possession of a young mind as absorbs it and renders it callous to every other kind of enjoyment. This axiom is true that a libertine, when in love as such a being exists, becomes from that moment less anxious of enjoyment. And to sum up all, between the behaviour of Danceny and the little Blanche and mine with the prude Madame de Tourret, the difference is only in degree. A few well-timed obstacles thrown in the young man's way might have been serviceable, for obstacles accompanied with mystery have a wonderful effect in inspiring boldness. I am apprehensive you have hurt our scheme by being too useful to him. Your conduct would have been excellent with an experienced man who had no view beyond desire. But you might have foreseen that a youth of honourable dispositions and immersed in love, the greatest value of favours is to be proof against love, and consequently the more certain he might be of being beloved, the less enterprising he would be. What is to do now? I know not, but I am of opinion that the girl cannot be caught before marriage, and that our labour will be lost. I am very sorry for it, but there is no remedy. Whilst I am writing a dissertation on this business, you are better employed with your chevalier. That recalls to my memory your promise to commit an infidelity in my favour. I have it in writing, and I don't intend it should be waste paper. I will allow the time of payment is not expired. It would be a generous act in you not to wait the day fixed for discharging it. On my part, I would acknowledge myself your debtor for their interest. What say you, my lovely friend? Are not you tired of your constancy? This chevalier is a wonderful fellow, it seems, but I am determined to compel you to acknowledge that if you found any merit in him, it arose from you having forgot me. Adieu, my dear friend. I embrace you as ardently as I desire to possess you. I defy all the chevalier's embraces to attain to an equal degree of ardour. How is it I deserve the reproaches you make me, and the indignation you express against me? The most violent, and the most respectful attachment, the most absolute submission to your will, is, in a few words, the history of my conduct and sentiments towards you. Sinking under the weight of an unhappy passion, the only consolation left was to see you. You ordered me to depart, and I obeyed without murmuring. For this sacrifice you permitted me to write to you, and now I am to be deprived of this only satisfaction. But shall I then have it torn from me without a struggle? No, certainly, it is too far, dear. It is the only one that remains, and I hold it from you. You say my letters are too frequent. I beg you will reflect that for these 10 days that I have been exiled from you, a single moment has not passed that was not taken up in thinking of you, and yet I have wrote you but 2 letters. I entertain you with nothing but my mad passion. What can I say but what I think? All I could do was to soften the expression, and I hope you will believe me when I assure you I have only let you see what I could not hide. At length you threatened to answer me no more, and thus the man who prefers you to everything, and whose respect is still greater than his love, you are not content to treat with the utmost severity, but add to it contempt. But why all those threats and this wrath? What occasion for them, when you are certain to be obeyed, even in your unjust orders? Is it then possible for me to contradict your wishes, and have I not already proved it? But will you abuse your power over me? After having made me miserable after all your injustice, will it be easy matter for you to enjoy that tranquillity that you say is so necessary to you? Will you never tell yourself, he made me arbitress of his fate, and I made him miserable. He implored my aid, and I did not even give him a compassionate glance. Do you know how far despair may drive me? No. To soothe my cares, you should know the extent of my passion, and you do know my heart. But to what am I made a sacrifice? To chimerical fears. Who inspired them? The man who adores you, a man over whom you will ever have an absolute sway. What can you dread from a sentiment that you will always have the power to direct at your pleasure? Your imagination creates monsters, and the fears they raise you attribute to love. With a little confidence, those fears will vanish. I learned, writer has said, that in order to dispel one's fears, it would be almost always sufficient to search the cause. It is to love, above all others, that this truth is applicable. Love, and your apprehensions will subside. In the room of terrifying objects, you will find a tender submissive lover and a delicious sentiment. Your days will be marked with bliss, and the only regret you will have will be to have lost so much time in indifference. Myself, even, since I have abandoned my errors, exist no longer but for love. I regret the time spent in pleasure, and I feel it is from you alone my happiness must proceed. But let me entreat you that the pleasure I have in writing you may not be interrupted by the dread of offending. I will not disobey you, but lay myself at your feet, and there reclaim the happiness you want to deprive me of, the only one that is left me. I call on you, hear my prayers, and behold my tears. Ah, madam, will you refuse me? Pray inform me, if you can, what is all this nonsense of Danceny? What has happened, and what has he lost? His fair one perhaps is angry at his constant respect, and really one would be vexed at a smaller matter. What shall I say to him, too, night at the rendezvous he requested, and which I have given him at all events? I shall most certainly lose my time to attend his doleful ditty, if it does not lead us to something. Passionate complaints are supportable only in recited obbligato or in grand airs. Give me your directions, then, about this business, and what am I to do? Otherwise I shall desert, to avoid the dullness I foresee. Could I have a little chat with you this morning? If you are busy, at least give me a line and a catchword for the part I am to act. Where was you yesterday? I can never now have the pleasure of seeing you at this rate. It was not worth while to keep me in Paris in the month of September. Take some resolution, however, for I have just received a most pressing invitation from the Countess to go see her in the country, and she writes very humorously that her husband has the finest word in the world, which he preserves carefully for the amusement of his friends, and you know I have some kind of right to that word. I will go see it again if you have no employment for me. Adieu. Remember, Danceny is to be with me at 4 o'clock. Ah, sir, I am in a state of desperation. All is lost. I dare not confide to paper the cause of my troubles, but want to pour them forth in the bosom of some faithful friend. At what hour can I see you, to seek consolation and advice from you? I was so happy the day I opened my mind to you. Now what an alteration! Everything is adverse to me. What I suffer upon my own account is the least part of my torments. My uneasiness for a much dearer object is what I cannot support. You